Today, I wanted us to go over an important principle that Lord Buddha has discussed on several occasions, one that is very helpful to reconnect or reinterpret our connection to reality, your living experience, starting with your thoughts, with your emotions, the body, of course. Because oftentimes it becomes overwhelming, this thing called life. And there is a misconception out there when it comes to the Dhamma, teachings of the Buddha, where some people look at the teachings being very complex and too far out, too much for the average mind or brain to really understand thoroughly. And that is not necessarily the case at all. Simplicity is key. If we follow the certain, the patterns or the formulas that are provided for us, and that's how we have the breakdowns that the Buddha provides for us in understanding, first to approach the Dhamma, to understand, whether it is through the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, in very clear-cut ways. But we have our own way of compartmentalizing things often, based on ignorance and our attachments to how things have worked for us. So we have a difficulty to adopt new ways of understanding. What I mean by that is we use old methods in order for us to understand the Dhamma, when it requires a different set of tools. So it is no surprise that many of us become attached to this or that, or we take it as face value, or we worship a term or two, or eight in the case of the Noble Eightfold Path. Or we take the dependent origination or dependent arising principles of Paticca the 12 links, and worship that. Memorize the links forwards and back, and think that we're actually practicing or understanding the Dhamma. Any moment Nibbana is going to happen. Well, humanity has done that pretty much for centuries, if not 2,600 years. In the majority cases, it has not worked for them. But why? If a person looks at the Dhamma and they're saying, well, I'm practicing this, so how come it's not working? Well, there are many, many factors to that, many variables to that. When we say, I understand the Dhamma, what is it that you understand? So clarification often is necessary at every step of the way. So this requires us to be practical, but at the same time, objective. So what I'm trying to say is our attachment to the perception of form is a big culprit in this. The attachment to form, to things that we can give dimensionality to. Even in Grecian philosophical schools, there was the absolute form and then capital F form and the lowercase form, if you will. And then you had atomism, or the reductionist attitude that they came up with. Democritus, even in Grecian times, came up with atoms, the principles of atoms, etc., where reality can be broken down into tiny, tiny, tiny little particles, beyond which they cannot be. So they're they're objects, basically. So oftentimes people have equated the Dhamma and its principles into something like that. And that is not true and definitely not fair for the Dhamma, to the Dhamma. But unfortunately, whether we know about such things or theories or approaches to reality being used under those, let's say, titles like reductionist or deconstructionist, etc., we nevertheless apply those techniques in our own ways of relating to life, relating to our behaviors, relating to our emotions, relating to even the Dhamma. So it is no wonder that many of us hold on to the Dhamma dogmatically, which turns into rites and rituals sooner or later. So to experience the world, the Buddha gave us the formula of the Four Noble Truths, but at the same time, he broken it down to various different constituents, such as the four great elements or four primaries: earth, water, fire, and air. Now, what I've noticed is, I'm not the only one, of course, who has noticed this or talked about this at length. Practitioners have seen that during the commentarial era or ages, which unfortunately still continues on, where more value is given to the commentaries of the suttas, people have turned the four elements or four great elements or four primaries into things that are objective, just like the atomists, just like people who still continue to equate the Dhamma, Buddhism, with science, which is a great disservice to both, not just of the Dhamma. It's funny because, people are wanting to build bridges, but it's not fair for the Dhamma, at least. In other words, the four elements, the four great elements, need not be looked at whenever we're studying the Dhamma, when Lord Buddha or any of the teachers, any of the Adi Savakas are talking about the constituents of reality, as in experience, looking at the aspect of, let's say, the fire element in something, including the body, when you're looking at the watery element, such as saliva, when we're doing the breakdown of the different 32 parts of the body, or you're doing maranasati, the contemplation of death, and to seeing that the body can be broken up into these pieces, different pieces. The temptation is that we, again, will attach some type of an objectivity to that, some type of a concretization, some type of a thingness to it. This is dangerous because we carry these concepts of form, meaning perceptions, into everything, including our understanding of the Dhamma, therefore. No one, I haven't come across, recently at least, teachers talking about this in relation to what the Buddha really taught. Because there's this clinging to ideas that were propagated outside of the suttas by teachers, usually commentaries. So My invitation here, as we start this sutta, which comes from the connected discourses, Saṁyutta Nikāya, is to cleanse ourselves or work to detox ourselves from the addictive perceptions that we cherish so much. Thinking in terms of our relationships to form, to things, to situations, to circumstances, to experiences, including experiences pertaining to the Dhamma. And therefore, our interpretations of those experiences, without making it sound like it's a philosophical class or a philosophy class or something like that, we need to sometimes look at the nitty-gritty ways with which we approach the Dhamma, and that is a major problem area for us, which causes so many of us not to be able to get the message. We end up with disappointments, which in essence are suffering. We have expectations. So many people turn away. That's why the Dhamma died in India. And it is dying in different parts of the world as well. Traditional countries, Buddhist countries, Theravada countries, it's dying. What you have left over is what was taking place in India at the time. Things that people can relate to. Because the proper explanation of the Dhamma is lost for many people. Because people don't have the time to go ahead and probe what is a commentary and what is the actual word of the Buddha coming through the suttas. People don't have that luxury of time. It behooves upon teachers to do that work and to explain what is what. So you have a lot of separation that's taking place between what is Dhamma and what people think it is. So that's why we need to go back to the suttas so we can identify. When Lord Buddha is saying the distinction between this path and every other path out there is that you can break it down into a few things. Samudaya, there is a rising. There's adinava, there is a falling back. Rising, falling back. There's anicca for you. There's asada, which is the gratification. This in terms of experiences, by the way. We need to look at them in terms of experience. And then there's the danger, the perilous danger. Attagama. And to see these different aspects of experience that happens to every one of us every day in different contexts, but they nevertheless happen. The wise one that is found within this Dhamma and discipline, in this path, is the one that takes on the last of these, the fourth step, and runs with it, meaning Nissarana. That is the one who sees an escape from all of this, from stepping out of all this drama of rising, falling, the seeking of gratification, and then falling again and again, the dangers, because we do not want to see that this is happening again and again. And that's why we are seeking, we're just like that donkey going after that carrot on a stick. The Buddha gave us a much better explanation by using these 5 phases of experience. Now, how often do we see this? How often do we look at this? Which requires us to see things as they are. That's why we practice sati sampajanya. When you're seeing things as they are, you're looking, what that means is a definition for looking and seeing the non-substantiality of things. Otherwise, why would you step out? Why would you step out of experience? Experiencing something again and again and again and again and again. When I was a child, I used to watch my dad play opera discs. You know, in the old days, they had big, I guess, not CDs, but discs, and he would play these operas, arias, and he would say, that's a voice, that's a voice. Look at that, feel that, feel that. I would listen to those. And I would love the arias where the tenor would go ahead and linger for a few seconds up there in that beautiful note, and I would just want him to stay there. It's like, especially listening to Puccini arias or something like that. I would just like, I hope this singer, I didn't know names by then. And then eventually I listened to, Pavarotti and all these. I was like, but then there's the Adinava. Boom. He has to come down. He can't stay there. The note, you cannot keep that high E or whatever. It has to come down. I felt so disappointed. There was dukkha there. But I didn't know anything about these principles. I didn't know Dhamma. I was so far away. But I knew there was something there behind it. Why does this keep? Because guess what? I had to repeat that arya. I had to listen to it again. I had to listen to relive it. In the 80s, if you remember cassette tapes, there was so many songs that I would try to, as a young teenager, I would try to record, wait for the radio station to, just to time it in such a way where the advertisement isn't playing. So I would just hit record. I would have literally my finger on the record button. I had borrowed this tape recorder thing from my dad. So I had the collection of cassettes that I had compiled, and I would listen to the same tracks again and again so that I would relive the arising, the sensational arising of that so-called beautiful moment. Why? So that I can feel the gratification of it. It was doing something to me, but I was wanting to maintain that in the absence of, while lying to myself that there is the perilous danger in it. Why is that? Perilous. Where is that? Time is passing. The tape is being ruined. The experience, no matter how many times you try to replay it, is going to leave you empty-handed, distraught, in pain, dominus, suffering, in anguish, because you're seeking the re-becoming, the bhava, and then the rebirth, jati, and then decay, and then death, and then the repeat of all that cycle. This path is the only one that demonstrates this, shows us the way out. That's the nissarana part. So, a big hurdle in seeing this, a big obstacle that is always there in front of us in understanding this beautiful quality of the Dhamma, is our attachment and reliance upon the perception of form. Taking things including the Dhamma, objectifying it, turning into some type of a dogma. In the hopes that we are trying to make it more palatable, to make it more understandable or comprehensible. And that is not correct. As we will see here in this sutta, which, as I mentioned, it comes from the Connected Discourses, the Saṁyutta Nikāya. It is SN 14.32, Saṁyutta Nikāya 14.32. It's from the Nidana Vagga Saṁyutta, which is the group of discourses connected to causation, and specifically from the Dhatu Saṁyutta. And that is, Dhatu means the primaries or the great elements. Dhatu, or sometimes called Chatu Mahabhuta. That's another one. So the sutta's name is in Pali Acariṁ Sutta. Acharing, I translate it as quest for gratification. Something that I think all of us could relate to in one way or another. So, gratification. Now, in this sutta, we're going to see Lord Buddha not mentioning the first two that I began this talk with, meaning the samudaya and the adinava, or the arising and the falling of the experience. What he's looking at now is the other links, or are the other aspects of that series of the five, meaning the seeking of gratification. That's the big problem. Because even when you hear again and again and again and again about anicca, impermanence, again and again, the Four Noble Truths being recited even by you, anicca, dukkha, anatta, anicca, dukkha, anatta, okay, anicca, impermanence, dukkha is the suffering that comes because of the fact that things are passing, and then seeing things as they are, showing you that things are not substantial. They are not objects. They are not things that you can hold on to. Even the breath, you got to let it go. Nevertheless, we continue to gratify ourselves. No, this experience is the one. Just like I was hitting the play button saying, oh, this time it's going to stick. Oh, this bite, this bite of that food. Oh yeah, this is it. The mind of the Putujjana works like that. It does not seek an answer. It seeks gratification. For that reason, it is also called dangerous, perilous. So Lord Buddha is going to talk about those two and the release from that miserable cycle that keeps us stuck in samsara, which is nissarana, the stepping out, escape from all this horrendous, cyclical, boring process that we refuse to see. And that's why we're practicing sati, essentially. That's what mindfulness is all about. Not to enhance the experience, which modern day mindfulness so-called teachers are advocating for. It's not peace. It's not attaining to some peace, because people were attaining to some peace even before the Buddha showed up. So many yogis, so many meditators at that time, during and after, to this day, can attain to some high levels of peace, but they drop out of it the moment they come out. Pottapada, if you recall, the Pottapada Sutta was all about that. He and the 300 wandering ascetics, naked ascetics, they were sitting there interrogating, asking the Buddha about, is there such a state where they don't fall out? Because they had convinced themselves that perception is so bad. So the only way that you can cut yourself off of it is if you attain to the highest jhanas. The problem with jhanas is you come out of the jhana. You cannot stay there. So even they had realized this. They would attain, however, some deep levels of peace. So peace itself is not the objective. That's why we say this path is based on wisdom. Peace is not going to take you to Nibbana. Wisdom is and will. This is a major problem in today's misunderstanding of people, while at the same time they keep on talking about sati, or Buddhist or non-Buddhist teachers, doesn't make a difference. So long as there is that misunderstanding or the ignorance, avidya, pertaining to the Dhamma. So I'll address more points as they come up, because I want to start the sutta. So Acariṁ Sutta, Quest for Gratification, Sutta number SN 14.32 from the Saṁyutta Nikāya. Here we go. Once, while the Blessed One was dwelling in Savatthi, he addressed the bhikkhus and said, "Bhikkhus?" "Yes, Bhante," replied the bhikkhus. The Blessed One then continued by saying, "Bhikkhus, I went in search of gratification within the earth element. And whatever gratification there is to be found within the earth element, that I have found out. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of gratification of the earth element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. Bhikkhus, I went in search of the perilous danger within the earth element. And whatever perilous danger there is to be encountered within the earth element, that I have found out as well. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of danger of the earth element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. Bhikkhus, I went in search of the way to entirely escape by stepping out from the earth element. And whatever way of escape by stepping out that there is from the earth element, that I have found out as well. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of the stepping out and escape from the earth element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. Our relationship to life, as I was saying in the beginning, has everything to do with looking at the different characteristics of the four elements playing through and through our experiences. So the experience of, I mentioned, doing the 32 parts of the body meditation, looking at hair, nails, teeth, skin. But you can take any part, any experience. You can take food, for example, something that is external to you, as form. So form doesn't necessarily only have to do with the earth element. Form can also be dealing with the water element or fire element or the air element. They're still considered to be form. That's why the perception of form is really a big problem. It is the thorn in the side of wisdom. So long as it's there, there's no wisdom, basically. We need to see that this is there. Perception itself indicates the presence of form in one way or the other. It is that quintessential tiny little doll that the child, the baby, has to keep on holding on to. And so long as you're holding on to your favorite blankie or favorite little doll, you are not going to penetrate into wisdom. But that's what we're doing. We hold on to the perception of form. In the case of the earth element, Lord Buddha is talking about the earth element, and you'll see in a minute as we go through the rest of this sutta how he's addressing the other three elements, but in connection to these aspects of how we view things. Remember, it was samudaya, the rising, the falling. This, the first one, is the gratification. Asada. We're looking to gratify ourselves with it. This is a promise. We are giving ourselves the promise that I'm going to end up feeling good. But we put a period there instead of a comma. We're telling ourselves that this is it, just like I was hitting play button, ignoring the fact that the aria, the song, the whatever is going to come to an end. That's why people like to take pictures of themselves when they are, youthful, healthy, young, in better days, better shape. And even when you ask them to show you pictures from their past, they will show you pictures of those times. I used to encourage patients and even some students to go ahead and look at before and after pictures of Hollywood stars, people that they would think, or not just Hollywood stars, but anyone they would think of as being very attractive. The picture, pick one, let's say Sophia Loren, okay, from the 50s, 60s, and now. Elizabeth Taylor, I don't know, it could be any model or actor, famous person, before and after. And now there are these wonderful apps or programs that people have come up with that shows you the time lapse in front of your eyes as the wrinkles are showing up. And as the spine is becoming more and more of a question mark. And they're coming nearer and nearer to a walker. They're starting to, roll themselves on a wheelchair. People don't want to see Elizabeth Taylor's picture or video of her having to be rolled on a wheelchair. They want to see her when she was young and youthful woman. What are they doing? They're trying to gratify themselves. Highlight the gratification part. In the case of bhikkhus, when we eat, there's a certain chant that we practice to ourselves or in a group of other bhikkhus, where we are saying that I will maintain correct attention and view this food that I'm about to eat not as something that will beautify me, not for the sake of giving me good feelings, not for the sake of seeking out pleasurable experiences, meaning gratify, but I simply am going to use it to give me sustenance so that I can continue doing the work I'm supposed to while I live a blameless life. That includes the eating process. My life also has that, takes this moment into it, the eating portion. That means I am protecting myself from being pulled in, sucked into turning this into something that it is not. It can never be. Because the food that I put into my mouth, despite how delicious it is, will end up being an excrement coming out of my body eventually. Now, people don't want to say that, hear that, visualize that either, of course. Why? Because we like to, again, highlight the gratification part. I mean, we spent hours and hours, sometimes in some cases, days preparing food. Food that will turn into contents that you don't want to look at in the bathroom once it comes out, or even before. Put a mouthful of, whatever it is that you like. You can even, I don't know, the image comes to mind, tiramisu or some delicious meal. Put it in your mouth, just one morsel, one spoonful, just fresh. Put it in your mouth, chew on it once, and remove it and put it on a plate. How appetizing is it now? That's dangerous. It shocks us. It pulls us out of the gratification state. But we avoid looking at the fact that it will leave us disappointed. And the danger also involves the repeatability of all this arduous self-deception process that we are always involved in. So next let's continue seeing what Lord Buddha is saying here. Bhikkhus, I went in search of gratification within the water element. And whatever gratification there is to be found within the water element, that I have found out. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of gratification of the water element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. Now, remember, water element, this is sometimes confusing for people when they come across the four elements. They think that we're talking about the periodic table. That's why initially I said this has nothing to do with the atomist theory, like the periodic table that we accept in sciences or chemistry classes or things of that nature. No, this is not the reductionist, especially current modern day scientist way of looking at things. That's why science is one thing, Buddhism is another. They are not the same. Science doesn't have the tools to measure the things that we're talking about. And science is to a great extent is subject to philosophical schools that are prevalent at that time, unfortunately. And today we're going through the postmodernist schools we're still having to deal with the damage that the postmodernist philosophical schools have wreaked upon the world. The whole injustices and all the whatever nonsense that's going on in the world that has nothing to do with science is very much caused by the postmodernist deluded ways of thinking and looking at the world, where it separates the person from whatever's happening in the world, and along with it the responsibility that each of us bears in relation to life and reality. So when we're talking about the water element, as the case is here with Lord Buddha mentioning how he went looking for gratification within the water element. So please do not think in terms of solid as in equal to earth element. Now Lord Buddha is talking about something that is liquidy, like water or milk or something. No. These are phases. They are not like physical states, even, to use a science term, ironically enough. These are phases of relationship, and specifically of our understanding of different experiences. Earlier, I was mentioning about the 32 parts of the body. So I mentioned saliva being water, but it could be thought related. Sometimes you will find the mind to be in a state where it feels like, or even the thoughts that are sliding through, almost like fluid process to them. Or the hindrances, they keep flowing in. The asavas are terms that oftentimes are translated into English as influxes, or I call them the contaminants. Think of sewage running into your house, leaking into your house. It's dirty, it's contaminating. That's the asava. So it has very liquidy. Sometimes you can even pick out something that is so hard and it's almost intangible, such as the breath. Sometimes it feels so heavy, and sometimes it feels very much watery. It's flowing. So you can look at the four elements through that lens, or through to your experience through the lens of the four elements in this fashion, such as the water element. Sometimes you're having a day where lovely moments happen, keep happening. You run into one friend, and then it's a great friend, and you hit it off, and you're so reminiscing this and that. And as if that's not enough, you come home, and all of a sudden there's a beautiful message from another friend. And you're feeling like you're so like uppity, and it's almost like walking on clouds. It's so, maybe even like the air element. But it's lovely. So think of these four elements not in the context of something that you can relate to in the physical world. Okay? Because I went in search of the perilous danger within the water element. And whatever perilous danger that is to be encountered within the water element, that I have found out as well. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of danger of the water element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. Here, the spectrum of danger, I mean, it's another way of saying the range of possibilities that is to be experienced through the water element. The experience of the water element, the wateriness, the liquidity, fluidity. In the context of meditation, again, if you're practicing the breath, but let's say looking at the way the belly moves. So when you're breathing through the belly, sometimes it's not so choppy. Sometimes it's very fluid. In fact, it's hard for you to decipher when is the beginning, when is the middle, when is the end phase of the breath, because it's so fluid. Just like looking at the waves out on the ocean, sometimes it's hard to decipher, well, where did the wave go? Where does it start? That. It doesn't have to be only about liquid things that are liquid. We're also looking at the mind, we're looking at the body. The way a feeling or an experience is, the sensation of it is experienced, or a feeling is experienced. The dangers have to be understood, the Buddha is saying. Now, why? Why is it perilous? Why is it dangerous? It is dangerous. It is a perilous danger because we are simply ignoring to see the impermanent and changing nature of that which is being sought, meaning the pleasurable experience. We are refusing to see that this pleasure-causing thing, experience, think of that, beautiful music or something that was gratifying me. It could be something else for you, for example. You're simply neglecting to, or refusing, not neglecting, you're refusing to look at the fact that it is simply passing. It will not stay. It's like the person going into the bathroom, the woman going into the bathroom, putting on makeup. Going into the makeup shop and buying new makeup, more expensive. Or you're talking to friends and they're saying, oh, I found this excellent doctor. He'll fix your face in no time. He'll make the lines disappear. And with it, every expression that you could have. Sensitivity to the skin, because they keep injecting this Botox, this, toxic jellyfish venom into the skin. Why? Because we want to keep that face, I don't know, in a certain shape. We're refusing to see that it is temporary. The pleasure that it's going to give us. So we refuse to see the suffering that is indelibly attached to it. It's part and parcel of it. It's changing nature we're refusing to see. We're blinding ourselves. We poke our eyes out, to give you a gruesome image, rather than to see the changing nature of things. That's why we even hold on to our concepts, the perception of form, how things are supposed to be, including the Dhamma. Including the Dhamma. People love, again, this is a different level of attachment, but nevertheless, it is attachment, nonetheless. That's why it becomes very difficult for a person to attain Arahantship. Even if they are, let's say, awakened to the third level, like an anagami, there's still attachment to the Dhamma. That's how subtle the sense of gratification is. Bhikkhus, I went in search of the way to entirely escape by stepping out from the water element. And whatever way of escape there is, by stepping out from the water element, that I have found out as well. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of the stepping out and escape from the water element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. This is key, to fully understand and wisely discern. Understanding here, or wisdom, being discerned through wisdom, is a personal affair. You have to do the work, but based on information that you get. But you have to do the work. When you're hearing this, this is one of the reasons why I say to individuals, this is not like the series of suttas that I've been doing all these years. This is not giving you an answer to a question you've had and boom, you got the answer. It's like a math problem and you move on. It doesn't work like that, because your ignorance is being sustained throughout your day. So this is not a matter of finding the right answer to a problem and move, that's it, your life is fixed. No, ignorance dominates in people's lives because there's still the perception of form that we are clinging to for dear life. So we come back and listen to it again. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. Listen to it again. Because this is your life. This is your gratification. And this is your danger that you are running away from. And it will be your freedom that you will be responsible in attaining. Nobody else can do it for you, to you, give it to you. So if you can just take with you today that when you're sitting to consume food, are you doing it? Are you consuming? Are you eating it? Are you drinking it in the presence of greed? Are you lost in that tiramisu that you're putting in your mouth? Or when you're looking at something so lovely, or you're touching something, wow, this satin or this soft texture, velvet, wow. That's what any putujjana does. That's what you might have done before listening to this talk. So adding the element of panya here requires us to do what? To do that, the Buddha never said stop eating food. This is the middle path afterwards, right? But check to see if there's greed there. If you're truly seeking gratification, making the food become something other than what it is. Now, to take this to another level, of course, would be to live as a recluse, as a monk. But you don't have to become a monk. You can practice nikāya, that sense of renunciation, as a layperson. Perfectly fine. And you will not become a monk overnight. Don't worry, that's not a danger. That's a wonderful blessing to have. To live as a layperson, but not to be Jesus actually took this from the Buddha. And later on, you see it in the Christian tradition where he says, be in this world, but not of it. Those were the words of the Buddha, by the way, that had been spoken over 500 years before, 500 plus years. But it's a beautiful statement. You, as a layperson, you can live in the world, but not of it. But how? Nobody gives you the tools for that. Well, here we have it. Is there the presence of lust in you when you are tasting with your six senses? Including, as I said, as it relates to the Dhamma. When you come across a principle, a teaching in the Buddha's words, and you go, wow, this is it. I'm going to nail this, tattoo this on my brain, in my body, whatever. Is there attachment there? Is there lust there? Is there hate there? Is there delusion? Are you taking things as substantial? If you are, then guess what? You are still stuck. You're gratifying and you're refusing to see the danger. And you're definitely not going to be able to step out. Nissarana. So escape is not possible. And for this reason, many people keep dumping new principles and new teachings. They go from retreat to retreat. By the way, I'm gesturing with my hand as you're moving a shovel. You're piling things, new terminology into your brain. Maybe even some experiences of jhanas here and there, if they are true jhana. And thinking that you're making it, you're getting closer and closer. It doesn't work like that. You're burying yourself. That's what you're doing. Because you're not realizing there's the strong presence of greed in you. So even the Dhamma becomes a major hurdle. And it has become for so many people out there. Bhikkhus, I went in search of gratification within the fire element. And whatever gratification there is to be found within the fire element, that I have found out. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of gratification of the fire element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. The fire element is, can be seen as, again, these are phases or qualities of experience. They're not necessarily the actual fire element. But they could also be seen, therefore, the way if a person is, physiologically speaking, if the person is unable to digest food, that means the fire element is not present. So heat is not present in the intestines or in the stomach. The body is not able to process. That's one way of looking at it. The thoughts, I mentioned about individuals who keep adding more stuff, more information, but it's not processed. It's undigested food, basically. It needs the heat of contemplating, looking at them again and again and again and again, to see that they begin to understand what the words are saying, what these principles, what these teachings are saying. What you're doing then is you're generating heat, fire. In Chinese medicine, there's the principle of sanjiao, which is the triple burner. One of them is here, in the brain. If it's lacking, the person is not functioning. And in clinical settings, when a person's heart stops, they still are not called clinically dead. But the moment the brain stops moving, then they're called clinically dead. They're dead. They're announced. They're declared to be dead. So the fire element is necessary. So without deviating so much here, So my attempt here is to look at these four elements not in a compartment-like element, the way we understand in the periodic table, because this thing keeps coming up. People still misunderstand, because what happened was, after the suttas were recorded, the teachings of the Buddha, in the canon, over time, people became lazy. People lazy in the fact that they were not practicing. They were practicing the brain a lot. They were practicing a lot of philosophizing. And terrible things happen, as we all know, when commentators show up. And they come up with theories. And what they did were, they created what you can say became like the atomistic theory. So you have books written today, accepted in the Theravada school, and that lean very much in and on and are based on objectifying these four elements, and has nothing to do with the teachings of the Buddha. But they're, part of the Theravada school. And then you had this taken to another level with the Mahayanis and then to Vajrayanis. So the problems began with the Theravada school. They were the ones who actually taught them how to go corrupting the Dhamma. It started there. That's why we go back to the suttas. That's what my efforts here are. So, gratification. Lord Buddha is saying he went looking for gratification within the earth element. So, gratification involves the desire to perpetuate greed, to perpetuate lust. And by the same token, to perpetuate the sense of even hatred, aversion towards this thing that isn't giving you pleasure. So you want this other thing out, you want this in. You see this in political views, you see this in people's opinions about things and how the world is supposed to be. Anybody who doesn't agree with me is out. I don't accept you. I don't care who you are. I will not accept you. Why? Because it doesn't fit my worldview. What I'm saying is then, this is gratifying me the way I see. This is objectifying. And that's the danger, because the person isn't seeing that so many countless times. Many people have come and gone, and they themselves have done that. You do not think the way you did 10 years ago. You don't look the way you did a year ago, 30 years ago. And we're not even talking about past lives. How many times we've been infatuated by this or that, and we've, So we are enslaved by experiences that gratify us, because we're infatuated by them, because we've lost sight of the insubstantiality of things, because we do not see things the way they are, the way we want them to be seen. That's the gratification part. That's the problem part. When I was a layman, even as a teenager, big celebrations, weddings, this and that, receptions, I'm sorry. And my mom used to push me to go and dance with, and I was like, why? Everybody's dancing, you have to dance too. You're stop acting like a monk. This is before I had gone to the monastery at age 15. So this is when I was 12, 13. But I would look at people. Everybody's dressed in their best outfits, the women with their hair and the makeup and the outfits, and the guys with their ties and this suits and things, and everybody's dancing and playing that, this role of everybody's lovey-dovey together. And I was like, I would start to disassemble what I was seeing, starting with the hair, women's hair. I would remove them. I would turn them bald. This is all happening in my head. I would remove their clothing, and I would just like, everybody's trying to be looking fit and things, like the men and this, and the bellies are hidden, this and that, and all these differences in color, this shapes and variety. Would it still be there if they were all naked? Would their behavior change if they're all naked? How about if they turn into skeletons? So these were some of the weird ideas I was having when I was a teenager, looking at this crowd of people, and I wouldn't dare to talk about this loudly to anyone because I didn't have anyone to talk to about these things. And, I was weird enough, but we are overstimulating ourselves with things that gratify us based on ignorance. I gave the example of our relationship with food, but it could also be with concepts, I kept saying, right? Opinions, the way things look. Nature of positions and relationships to each other with people, roles, status, all of these could be seen in the context of what the Buddha is saying about seeking gratification. I want to get, 6-digit or 7-digit, I think that's what the people are going for now, 7-digit salary. Okay, then these people don't want to think about the then part, because what that is introducing is the fact that you need to seek an escape from this nonsense, because there is a person who is making 6, 7, 8 figures, 9 figures than you could ever possibly imagine, and they are totally unhappy. No, don't tell me about that. Why? Because it demolishes my understanding of life. It's taking away, it's pulling the rug from underneath the gratification before I'm even gratified. So at least let me be deluded enough to go seeking after this. Whether it is attained or not, that's a different story. It doesn't concern you. That's what we're doing. That's why you don't have practitioners of the Dhamma. It's easy to listen. It's easy to pretend to be listening. It's easy to read books, even to go on retreats, to tell yourself that you're practicing X amount of hours a day. But it's difficult to expose these different lies we tell ourselves. And that's the danger each of us must face and overcome in order for us to do the stepping out portion. Because I went in search of the perilous danger within the fire element, and whatever perilous danger there is to be encountered within the fire element, that I have found out as well. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of danger of the fire element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. Bhikkhus, I went in search of the way to entirely escape by stepping out from the fire element, and whatever way of escape there is by stepping out of the fire element, that I have found out as well. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum or range of the stepping out and escape from the fire element, that I have understood fully and wisely discerned. So, even the Buddha is saying, do not, as I was mentioning earlier, he never said, stop eating food, stop being a layperson. He's not saying that. Nowhere is he saying that. But what is key is to use the food to abandon your relationship with the food. This is key. This is where the giants fell out of the wagon centuries ago, thousands of years ago. Why? Because they've taken it to an extreme, walking naked, not eating, fasting, starving themselves, thinking that they're actually doing something. And you have so many different types of corrupt, new or revisited ways of deluded thinking in people's habits, diets and this and that are totally inappropriate for the human body. But people do it. because they think that it's going to take them to some spiritual level of attainment. It's your relationship to it. So the Buddha is saying, by using food, by depending on food, reliance on it, understanding that, you give up food. Why or how? By not being obsessed over it. So your relationship with things, with the four elements, is requiring some tweaking. That's the stepping out. That's why you can step out, not by physically renouncing your life as a layperson and walking into, leaving behind and walking into a monastery and becoming a monk. That's not what is being said here. Of course, if that's the intention, that is where this will go. But you can function fully and reach the ultimate of whatever this sutta is promising while still being a layperson. There's no difference at all. Nissarana is not some state that you attain to in the walls of a monastery or in the woods. That's not Nissarana. There are so many people that are so much lost in materialism and seeking of fame within monasteries today. Well, where's the recluseship? What are you talking about? What is the whole point of becoming a bhikkhu? What is the role of wearing the robes? It's not something external, There are people who have less things to wear than I do with robes, even though it's nothing. There's only 3 robes I have. What is this? The robes are symbol. It has to be reflected. The recluseship, I mean. So, as a layperson, you have access to all of these attainments without having to change your life externally. It's internal work. This is key because it requires having the wisdom to step out. Bhikkhus, I went in search of gratification within the air element, and whatever gratification there is to be found within the air element, that I have found out. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of gratification of the air element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. Bhikkhus, I went in search of the perilous danger within the air element, and whatever perilous danger there is to be encountered within the air element, that I have found out as well. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of danger of the air element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. Bhikkhus, I went in search of the way to entirely escape by stepping out from the air element, and whatever way of escape there is by stepping out from the air element, that I have found out too. Thus, whatever happens to be the spectrum of the stepping out and escape from the air element, that I have fully understood and wisely discerned. This is itself the escape that this path taught by the Blessed One keeps talking about in all of these suttas that we've gone over. This is what the path is teaching. This Dhamma is teaching. In fact, this is how it's promising us Nibbana. This is how it delivers Nibbana to each and every one of us, which is the liberation from all these things that we're stepping out of. But it's not going to be happening unless you step out. Again, the stepping out is simply a term of emotionally, mentally, intellectually even, to step out of your old pattern way of thinking about experience, to see the perilous danger of gratification, that's behind almost every experience that we want to have. Why? Because we want the pleasurable experience. And we're refusing to see the impermanence of it, which makes it dangerous. So hopefully what I'm sharing with you here in this beautiful sutta allows you a different look, a different way of looking at experience and identifying this gratification part, which is dangerous, terribly. And that's why we keep coming back into the endless rebirth cycles of samsara, of birth and death and everything else that goes along with it. Because you don't remember the pain and suffering that you went through in the past life. That's another horrendous fact about things. Because if we had the ability to see, or to see other people going through it, it's beyond painful to just observe. Even if it's not you going through it and you're observing other people going through these cycles, it's so painful, it's unimaginable. The stupidity with which we drag ourselves in a different name, different body, different context, but the same drive, blind, gratifying, blind attitude, devoted fully to ignorance. Stepping out is the only way, and this path delivers that. Now, Bhikkhu, so long as I had not yet fully understood nor wisely discerned the full range and spectrum of seeking that gratification, the perilous dangers and the escape to be experienced by stepping out from these four elements, I did not declare my perfect and full awakening in existence, this world with all its gods, maras and Brahma gods, along with its populations of recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins, as well as the human and non-human beings found within it. Again, when Lord Buddha is talking about stepping out from these four elements, that means the whole spectrum of life as such, in all of its phases, in all of its aspects, in all of its nuances. Therefore, because it was only after I fully understood and wisely discerned the full range and spectrum of seeking that gratification, the perilous dangers and the escape to be experienced by stepping out from these four elements, that I did declare my perfect and full awakening in existence. This world with all its gods, maras, and Brahma gods, along with its populations of recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins, as well as the human and non-human beings found within it. So he's saying only after he attained, and he knew for sure by seeing it, identifying it, acknowledging it, the change that happened within him and his understanding, only then did he declare his full Buddhahood. He wasn't rushing to call himself, okay, I made it. No. And that is teaching us something, hopefully, that we have to also be authentic about where we are in our understanding of the Dhamma. You're not practicing the Dhamma for anybody else. You're not practicing or learning or studying the Dhamma for anybody else, to show off anything to anybody else. What is there to show off? Really, it's your suffering that you're ending. Your own suffering that you're going to be ending. That's it. Has nothing to do with others. And when you are liberated from your suffering, you're a joyful person than you were yesterday when you were suffering. And that is a great thing, because now it's going to impact everyone else. So your silence is paramount. You don't have anything to declare because your behavior is declaring enough. Which in this world that we live, where everything is about superficiality and showing off and being the next influencer, it goes against that completely. because it's teaching you how to be together with yourself. And not be doing something for someone else, for others, to feel good about yourself. That's a nonsense. That's stupidity. Idiotic. It has to be for you when you're stepping out. It has to be for you when you're deciding to seclude yourself from that greed. You don't have to go ahead convincing other people to do that, to copy you. That's very self-righteous. That's very wrong. It's very dogmatic. The Dhamma is loud enough. We just have to listen to it. We just have to hear it and live it, practice it. And it was right then, bhikkhus, that the direct understanding and unmistakable knowledge arose within me, and I saw that unshakable is my liberation. This indeed is my very last birth. For truly there is no more rebirths left for me now, nor is even possible into any future life at all. Sad, sad, sad. The Buddha has taught different ways that bring us towards the fading away, the destruction of what I was saying in the beginning, perception of form, our perceptions. Because they involve sense of identification. And one of the qualities that an Arahant has, the mind no longer has perceptions unless he or she wants to think. It's called signless, animitta. It's quiet. It's appanihita. It is undirected. It is sunyata. It is void and empty. Empty of what? These identifications. It's free from what? Concepts, perceptions that plague us. That's where we get our papanchas, our mental proliferations. They need food, Mental proliferations, conceptual proliferations keep on multiplying. They need sustenance. In what form? Thoughts, concepts, memories, sanyas. So, because of these four elements that are often called the four primaries, we generate within us this sense of, or perception of form that gets deeply ingrained, and we have become so infatuated by it, the perception of form. That's why we need to dislodge and detox ourselves from these things. That's why when you go on a retreat, whether it is, you're doing it yourself in your own home, you put away your phone, this and that, you're creating some space where you're not invaded as much. You're not creating agitation. Why? Because perceptions create agitation. They create heat. That's why a person who keeps scrolling, let's say Instagram or any type of social, whatever it is, you keep scrolling and you're watching the news, this and that, and then suddenly go ahead and try to sit down for a session of meditation. Good luck. It's not going to happen. People come and say, well, I don't know why I wasn't able to sit today. Well, what were you doing before? Well, I was just checking email. I was just doing this, but I just checked the news, and it's like, oh, it's simmering. the skillet is burning, creating agitation. Why? Because each of these perceptions create identifications. That's what we do. And the danger, again, it lies in the fact that we refuse to see, or we neglect to see, the fact that all of these things are impermanent. All of these things are impermanent, including how we feel about these attachments. They're so unreliable. They're always decaying. They're always ending. But we keep adding. We keep generating. Hence, we get likes and dislikes, likes and dislikes, likes and dislikes. Boom, 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 boom. Pendulum keeps going back and forth. So there's two things that we need to distinguish from each other. We need to understand what is skillful from what is unskillful, what is kusala from what is akusala. Meaning, is this thing giving me, when all is said and done, is this thing leaving me with a sense of emptiness, a sense of, not in a good way, emptiness, like I was saying about shunyata, but in the sense of distraught and suffering, dukkha laden? Is it giving me that sense of decline? Is the mind becoming agitated because of it? Then it is unskillful, it is akusala, even if it is happiness based, even if it is happiness that you're after. As I was saying, even if it's Dhamma that you're seeking, even Dhamma can be kusala or akusala. Not because it's the Dhamma is akusala. No, our attachment to it makes it akusala. So, ultimately, is this thing lifting me up or bringing me down? Even happiness. So when you're seeing or asking these questions, what you're doing is you're stepping out, you're looking away, and you're pulling away, you're pulling away, you're pulling away, because you're identifying the problem now. And that's why the Buddha says the happiness that is not connected with thinking or pondering, vitakka, it's called avitakka, is nearer to Nibbana. The mind that is not lost in concepts or perceptions of anything is closer to Nibbana. There's a term called attammayata, or atammayata, rather. The last one is long atammayata. And it's all about that. What I was trying to say about non-identification with things. Because even the Dhamma can't, if you identify with it, you're stuck. Venerable Sariputta was sitting there in, Indian summer, in the waving this fan, moving the fan back and forth to give some soft breeze to Lord Buddha as he was sitting teaching the Dhamma to Venerable Sariputta's own nephew, who was a layperson. So Venerable Sariputta, the chief disciple to Lord Buddha, who was not yet an Arahant, he was sitting there fanning Lord Buddha. You can imagine. After lunch, it's hot. Maybe they're sitting in a cave. And Lord Buddha is giving a beautiful Dhamma talk to this young layperson who's come genuinely to know, to understand the Dhamma better, who has questions. And Venerable Sariputta was observing. Suddenly, it hit him. He realized, oh, look how my teacher is teaching the Dhamma. Look at his demeanor. Look how he's not attached to the Dhamma. This is the king of the Dhamma. Because of him, we have arahants in the world. Because of him, there is hope to escape samsara. My teacher is sitting there. Because of him, I know the Dhamma. But he's not attached. That told him a lot, to the point where, in seeing the non-identification with the Dhamma within the body of the Buddha, within the presence of Lord Buddha, that realization allowed Venerable Sariputta to attain Arahantship himself. Lord Buddha didn't say anything to him, you know. He was so observant. Every moment of his experience was about stepping out. That's the difference. That's why you don't have Venerable Sariputtas running around these days. Why? Because people aren't taking that risk of challenging their beliefs, their perceptions of whatever it is that they think is of value. Because we love being identified with things. Even equanimity, upekkha, we want to identify with. But Lord Buddha said this beautifully when he said, even equanimity there's two kinds, one that is to be pursued and one that is not. Why? Because anything that keeps you chained up in greed, even something as beautiful as equanimity, upekkha, one of the Brahma Viharas, after all, right? One of the 7 factors of awakening, the last one, has so many different great qualities within it. Even that has to be leading you out of suffering, not keeping you locked in. So even that has to be abandoned. That's what sets this path apart from everything else, every other path out there, because it teaches us to even abandon that, just like Lord Buddha was saying, through the use of food, abandon food. Don't rely on it. Don't be attached to it. Otherwise, we would be just like everybody else. There's a Pali term called yena yena hi manyanti tato tang hoti anyatha, which means in whichever way they imagine it to be, whatever significance they give it, thereby it turns otherwise. And that's what we do constantly. We're always, always, always locking ourselves into something, making this to be something that it can never be, giving it significance. Oh, this beauty of mine, or the love relationship that I have with you, or this thing, or this attainment. But the moment there is this grabbing onto this identification, basically, it turns otherwise, Lord Buddha says. Anyatha. It becomes otherwise. Why? Because it's anicca, impermanent. And knowing impermanence, we cut ourselves free from it. We cannot attain freedom by not wanting to see or not seeing impermanence. The way to Nibbana is through anicca. We have to see anicca for what it is, to break away from it. Otherwise, we would be living in delusion. With that, I will pause and see if there are any questions. I thought this sutta was a rather shorter one, but it's still. Are there any questions? If not, then let us transfer some merits. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Lokasasana. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Desana. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Mamparanti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May joy always permeate your hearts, your minds. May there be tranquility, non-agitation in your minds, in your hearts. May your relationships grow. May there be harmony in your life and in the lives of your loved ones. And may you continuously grow, not decay, grow in the Dhamma. But for that, you need to fearlessly go forward, fearlessly, and trust. Trust in the goodness in your heart as demonstrated by your practice of dana, generosity, your practice of sila, virtuous living, your practice of samadhi, even if it's 5 minutes of meditation a day, or collectively 1 hour of sati for a whole week. Still, you're practicing bhavana, mental cultivation. And all these augmented by you listening to the suttas, reading them, trying to understand, maybe even just a sentence from today's talk. That's going to invite more and more insights to occur in your mind, because we need all the help we can get. And that's why these are here available to you. And making use of this rare opportunity of being born as a human being in this day and age, in this time where we still have the Dhamma, is a wonderful thing. Make use of it. So, until next time, Sukhi Hot.